How do you go from writing an original Star Trek episode to launching real rockets, to surviving crocodiles, rapids, and baboons, to writing soul bearing essays? Simple. You boldly go where no memoirist has gone before. Meet Chester L. Richards. He doesn't just tell stories, he lives them at warp speed, guided by a thirst for adventure and an undying tribute to his true love. And a reminder that the real final frontier is your own story. Chester, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you back because this is your second time on the show. And this is your second memoir that we're going to be talking about. So congratulations on number 2. I think there might even be some more in the works that we can talk about at a time in the future.
Yes, indeed. There is a third one. It's already written, ready to be edited. It's next year's project.
Oh, I love it. We always need projects, don't we? Let's start by the project, I guess, that kicked this whole thing off, so to speak, because you were a co-writer on one of the very first Star Trek episodes. And that was a catalyst that changed so many things in your life. Can you tell us about writing that episode of the Tholian Web?
It was a lot of fun. It was my first really great adventure. I had developed a friendship with a school friend, Judy Burns, and she was interested in writing a speculative script for Star Trek. But she was running out of ideas or didn't have anything that really clicked. And I had this very strange dream one day. I was on the bridge of the Enterprise, the starship, and there was a ghost that was haunting the bridge and everything was falling apart. People were scared to death. Well, that was a dream. So that dream woke me up. And in the morning, I called Judy and I said, I just had this weird dream last night. And she says, that's a great idea for a story. Let's do it together. So we did. We started working on a collaborative script. And it was a speculative. We had no idea where it was going to go, but we just decided to go ahead and do it. First, you do a story treatment so you know where things are going to go in the story. And then you divide up the story treatment into these little scenes that, teleplays and movies are all little scenes. They're little modules that you play around with. So we started working on that. And what Judy did was she was really good about people. And so she took the scenes where there was a lot of human interaction. And I took the scenes where you had background information and technology kinds of stuff, because I was pretty good at that sort of thing. And that's how we worked up our assignments and how we divided the story. So we got this script done, and Judy was taking a script writing class from a guy named Bob Duncan, who was an old pro in the business. And Bob asked, this little good script that you guys wrote, whatever happened to that? And Judy says, there was a big reorganization at Star Trek. They got a new producer and all that. So Bob said, who's the producer? And Judy says, there's a guy named Fred Freiberger. And Bob, he just lit up. He says, I've known Freddie forever. We've done so many things together. He says, I'll call him in the morning, get him to read your script, which he did.
That's amazing. Amazing. And then you were able... Exactly. Well, there's talent behind that. I know they say it's not what you know, but who you know. So you had the right mixture of things. And I do want to talk about you working with Judy as a writing partner. But first, I just got to ask, what did it feel like when you were sitting there and you saw up on the screen the episode that you wrote as a writer? What did that feel like?
It's a very strange experience. You have to understand the situation. What we had done was gathered all kinds of friends and family together to do the viewing of the episode. So when the episode came on the air, of course, there was a great thrill. Great cheer went up. Everybody was in very festive mood. And then I started watching this thing on the screen, and I'm saying, gee, I had written that stuff. Those are my words. And of course, when I was writing the stuff, I was writing it. The way I wrote was, since I already knew how the scene was going to come out, that came out of the story treatment. All I did was I set up the characters in the scene and let them walk around and talk. And I just wrote down what I saw in my visualization. So now I'm seeing the same thing on the screen. And it was an echo of what I had visualized when I was actually writing my part of the script. Very, very strange experience, because it wasn't exactly what I had visualized when I was writing, but it was an echo. It was really, really interesting.
It was a ghost, so to speak, just like the ghost that you had in your dream. I'm curious. You say that writing the script was fun, but it was also very, very hard. Like, this wasn't an easy thing. Can you talk about what made it difficult?
I think the time pressure. To give you an example, Fred Freiberger had in fact read the script, and his associate producer, Bob Justman, had read the script as well. And they called us up for a script meeting in Hollywood, which, first thing in the morning, we drive up to Hollywood and talk our way through the guard at the gate at Paramount Studios and go in for the script meeting. Now, the physical layout of Fred Freiberger's office was the following. It was a small office. Fred was sitting behind a desk, and across from the desk was a sofa. And that was the furniture in the office. It was very, very sparse. And sitting on the sofa to my right was Judy. Sitting on the sofa to my left was Arthur Singer, the story editor. And Bob Justman was walking around in front of us between the desk and the sofa, and he couldn't sit still. So he's walking back and forth with his secretary following in his footsteps, literally right behind him, taking notes in shorthand, everything that he said as he walked around. So here's the deal. The first thing was they said that we're going to buy your script. It's a good script. We're going to buy it. So, wow, what a feeling that is. The second thing that happened is Bob started going through the notes he had made about the script. And it suddenly dawned on me, he just destroyed everything we had written.
Oh, no.
He had changed the characters around. We had to write a brand new story. We could use some of the same elements, but fundamentally it was a new story.
Page one rewrite, the words that no writer ever wants to hear. So when you and Judy put that all together, like, you were really working fast. You had this time crunch.
Oh yeah,
all this pressure.
The first thing was that Judy just poked me in the ribs and says, "Don't say implied from that. Don't say a word. Just agree to everything.
Just do it."
Yeah, right.
Don't complain. Just do it.
Just do it. So, but here's the thing. So this was a Friday meeting, and they gave us until next Friday to write a whole new script and get it into production. They wanted to see if we could do it, if we were pros or we were, fly-by-night amateurs. So we had 1 week to write almost from scratch, a brand new script. Nice. And we did it. We pulled it off, but we had a lot of midnight sessions along the way, so working 7 days a week.
So what was it? Can you tell, especially the writers that might be listening who have been thinking of maybe working with a writing partner, what was that dynamic like? What suggestions do you have for somebody who wants to work with a writing partner, like when you wrote with Judy?
Well, first of all, it's a friendship. And absolutely nothing that happens during the course of your transactions can get in the way of that friendship. That's rule number one. You're going to get a lot of criticism for the work that you do because your partner sees the world differently than you do. And your partner sees things in you and in the work that you've done that you miss yourself. Every creative person recognizes that they don't get everything exactly right the first time. Mm-hmm. You do have to go through a stage of critique and polishing and rehabilitation, all things like that. So you have to accept the fact that you're going to get criticized. And you're going to love what you're doing, of course. You love the product you've produced, and then all of a sudden, oh no, that doesn't work. You've got to do it. Here's the problem with what you've done.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into consideration and just let it happen, because that partner's working for you. That partner's not working against you. There's going to be a lot of yelling and screaming, and you have any creative enterprise between talented people. There are ideas getting thrown around. There's going to be a lot of excitement and a lot of yelling and what I call yelling and screaming, which is really just.
And I think you're really good at screaming for some other reasons too. I want to get to some of the adventures that you've been on, and let's just set the stage a little bit more. So you wrote this episode of Star Trek. It really changed your perspective on the world and writing, and introduced you to new things. And then you became a what? Tell us your profession after that.
My profession is I'm an engineering physicist, and I worked in the aerospace industry, which is a science fiction industry. The kinds of projects I worked on, rockets and satellites and laser ray guns, for heaven's sakes. I actually worked about 20 years in that area. So it's very exciting. It's very, it's the future. It's a science fiction world that I was working in, with the most amazing people in that world. Let me give you an example of the kind of people you run into in that industry. There was a guy named Tom Coltis. He was a friend. He was a colleague. He was my mentor. He taught me an awful lot about things. Tom is an American hero, a genuine American hero. And here's why. When the Apollo program was underway, the Saturn moon rocket had been undergoing test flights. And the sixth of those test flights, which was the last flight before people were to actually fly on the rocket, what they discovered was very upsetting to the program. What they discovered is that the rocket would kill the astronauts.
Oh my.
Oh my, yes. There was no way that anybody was going to allow the astronauts to fly on the Saturn rocket. So the program was dead. The Apollo program was dead. This was 1968. Well, Tom was one of the key figures in that, in the design of that rocket, and he diagnosed the problem and created a really interesting invention to fix that problem. So what they did was they rebuilt the first stage of the Saturn rocket using his ideas.
Wow.
And that solved the problem, and they flew the astronauts to the moon.
Amazing. And
so Tom saved the Apollo program. It was absolutely dead. And he saved the program. He saved America's prestige and honor and all the rest of that stuff. So Tom is a real American hero. And that's the kind of people you run into in that industry. There's a bunch of those guys that I had the great privilege of working with those people. And that's the greatest reward for working in the science fiction world, the real science
fiction world. Yeah. And you're a hero too. I'll rank your name up there with them. I'm curious, what do you think that Star Trek contributed to the world in your view? Are we living in the future that Star Trek once envisioned?
We're living in the world that Star Trek created. It's not the same as what you see on the TV screen. It's a world that was so profoundly influenced by Star Trek that influence is everywhere. You can go any place on this planet and talk about Star Trek, and people will know what you're talking about because they've all seen it. They've all seen it. But more than that, let me tell you what happened. So the Apollo moonshots went to the moon. And so we had our phenomenal success and all the prestige that goes with it. And the politicians lost interest, and they canceled the program before it was finished. And manned space flight was dead, absolutely dead. The Russians couldn't do it, and the United States was no longer interested. What happened then was that Star Trek community took hold. Star Trek, there was so much demand for Star Trek that people started making movies and then television programs around the Star Trek theme. And that regenerated the interest in the political class for manned spaceflight. So it was literally Star Trek that put people back in space. Extraordinarily important development in human history, and that came out of this TV show, for heaven's sakes, you know.
And it's so cool that you contributed to that.
Oh yeah, and you know, the thing is, when we were doing the TV thing, there was absolutely nobody that had any idea of the significance of what we were doing. I mean, you know, Judy and I were writing stuff, and Arthur Singer was editing the stuff, and Bobby Justman was running around making modifications to the story, and we were doing script rewrites, and the actors were learning their lines and playing their characters and so on. Nobody had any idea that this was important. It was just another TV show, but it changed the world.
It's amazing. It reminds me of that butterfly effect, because this all started with a dream that you had, which might have been just because you ate a bad cannoli the night before. So
I have no idea what I ate the night before.
But it could have been,
but it was
right?
an interesting dream, that's for sure.
And it led to all of this, and you were a part of that. So that's got to just feel phenomenal. And I know that you're the type of person, and that's what your books are about, your memoirs are about, is this adventure mindset. And we're not just talking about going on adventures as being a location. It's also the way you think and feel about it, because you've faced crocodiles and baboons, diseases, the rapids. What drives you, Chester, to seek adventures?
Well, it's fun. It really is. It is exciting to do something that you've never done before. And once you've done that, of course, you can do it again, but then it's a recreation if you're doing it for a second or third or fourth time, you know. And that's fun too, but it's not the same as an adventure. Adventure is when you're doing something brand new, something you've never done before. Now, for example, I did a lot of different rivers. Okay, but I only did every river once, except for one river, and that was the Colorado in the Grand Canyon. The first time I went down the Grand Canyon, I went as a passenger on a boat. The second was many years later. I actually rowed a boat through the length of the canyon. It's a completely different experience than the first time, because I was now in charge of the boat. And of course, I had to face the rapids. It was my responsibility to get through the rapids. So that was a completely different kind of adventure, even though it was in the same location. But generally, I went to completely new places. The adventures were all at different places, different circumstances, a lot of the same people, because a lot of us traipsed around from one place to another. So they became my friends, wandering around to different parts of the world. And of course, those were outdoor adventures. And I did other things than rivers. I backpacked on the Muir Trail in the Sierra Mountains and things of that sort. Did a 100-mile hike in the Grand Canyon one winter in the dead of winter. Wow. That was an interesting experience. So there were a lot of other kinds of adventures than just river adventures. And
when is it appropriate to scream at the top of your lungs?
Yeah, I had told you about that. Well, let me tell you. I took a class to learn how to kayak in whitewater kayaking. And one of the things that they teach you in kayaking is when you're facing a really dangerous rapid, the best thing you can do is just scream at the top of your lungs. And what that does is it loosens you up and gets your body prepared for the action that's about to come. I have to tell you, when you're in the middle of, it's really scary going in. You're looking down at this thing and you're seeing what you're about to get involved in, and your guts just get tied up in a little knot, and then so you gotta yell to loosen up that knot and get yourself prepared. However, when you're in the middle of the action, there's no scary. You're not scared at all. You're far too busy to be scared. And then what happens is a really interesting thing. You get through it, hopefully safely at the other end. And the feeling of exhilaration, of exaltation that you have at the end of that experience is unbelievable. It just cannot be described. All you can say is, wow, it was something to go through. So, you live for the fear in the beginning. You live for the excitement in the middle, and you live for the exaltation at the end. It's really quite an experience.
And in between, there's also moments of softness and gentleness, and maybe even in an unexpected way. Can you tell us about the time you encountered a leopard?
Oh, the leopard. Yeah, well, so that was in Africa, and I made friends with a leopard. Now, there was no danger here. The leopard was in a cage, but the cage had bars that were, a foot wide, something like that, just enough to keep him from running out. So he looked at me, and I looked at him, and this was back in the backwoods a little ways, and I said, "Oh, you need some company." So I sat down and started talking to him, and he started talking to me. I mean, our faces were a foot apart, 6 inches apart. I was looking into his eyes, and he was looking into my eyes, and I was talking gently with him, and he was purring back at me. And then he got up, stretched himself, nuzzled the bars of the cage, lay back down, looked at me again, and started purring even louder.
Aww.
And I was so tempted to reach in and pet him. I could have done, reached right through the bars and petted him. And I didn't do that because I had the responsibility to my companions on the expedition.
Right. But that's amazing because those big cats, they're so much like the little household cats. So that's
he was just a big kitty and so friendly, and just really appreciating the company that I was giving him. But there's a real danger there, and I couldn't take the chance to jeopardize the expedition. So, but I've regretted it ever since. To this day, I wished I had taken the chance and petted him. I mean, his face was right there. His hand was right there. His head was right there in front of me.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't, because the hand that you're waving right now might not
right in front of his mouth.
Might not be there right now. It'd be like, yeah, this is what happened when I pet a leopard. Don't ever do that, kids.
Yeah, but what an experience. I mean, that's one of the things that sticks with you through an entire lifetime. It's an extraordinary experience to have.
Yeah. And I know another influence that has stuck with you, even to this moment, is the love of your life, Sarah, which is a part of this memoir as well. Can you talk us a little bit about Sarah, who was your co-adventurer, your muse? Tell us about Sarah, please.
Well, the word I use to describe Sarah is splendid. She was the most remarkable creature on this planet as far as I was concerned. And I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think everybody that ran into her had exactly the same reaction to this wonderful lady. She had enormous talent. Intellectually, she was absolutely brilliant. And she had so many other gifts as well. She had, of course, her musical gifts. She was a professional singer, had been trained for opera, had sung on the opera stage, had a beautiful spinto voice, which is very rare in the operatic community. And just listening to her talk, there was a song in her voice, the way her words came out. It was just a very pleasant experience. When I came home from work and I was tired and it had been a long day and all that sort of, I'd walk in the front door and Sarah would always greet me with, "Hi, Chet." She would sort of sing out. She says, "Welcome home. How was your day?" And then we sit and I tell her the events of the day, and she would take the burden off of me. She would just lift it and throw it away. That's the kind of day I had every day coming home. You look forward to coming home. You look forward not just to the events of being at home and all that, but to the greeting when I walked through the front door. It was always the same. "Hi, Chet. Welcome home.
Oh, I love that.
Day." She had her problems. She had an automobile accident that left her crippled, so we had to deal with that and so on. But what an amazing experience to be with that woman. We were together for 20 years, and that was far too short a time, as it turned out. So naturally, I was devastated when she passed away, and it took me a long time to recover. And that's how I got into writing. I found that by writing, I could actually lift my spirits a little bit, because Sarah, I was basically writing what I thought of at the time as letters to Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just writing stories that she knew, things we had talked about over the years, and some of the things we had experienced together. And so she was part of that. She was part of the story. She was embedded in what I was doing, and she was my muse. She was lifting me out of that depression that I was in.
And that comes through in your writing. I mean, it comes from the heart, and a little bit of Sarah is living on in the words in your books. And
In
that's
everything I write, she's in everything I write.
Yeah.
And that was part of what I learned through the process of recovery, was just that her spirit was always there, and she was guiding what I was putting. By the way, it's a lot of fun to write. I got to the point where I just really enjoy flinging words at the page. It's a lot of fun. And so she's there with me, sharing that entertainment, that enjoyment of the process.
And another thing that you do too, with openness and honesty, and you're really bearing your soul, is writing about some of your failures as well, because that's not easy to do. Can you talk about writing about your failures in this book too?
Yeah, failure. Well, I've had a lot of them. And by the way, that's not unusual. Failure is the norm in engineering. Almost everything you do doesn't work when the first thing that you try. So you learn to diagnose, and from diagnosing and fixing the failure is where you actually do your learning. So failure is really important in the process of learning. You learn far more from your failures than you do from your successes. So you have to accept that. But talking to other people about places where you failed, that's hard, because basically you're bearing your soul. You're standing naked in front of the rest of the world when you do that. That's not easy to do. So I had to be talked into it. Eventually, with good advice, I started writing about failures. So let me give you one example of what you can learn from failure. So when I was in graduate school, getting ready for my PhD quals, I did pretty well in most classes and I was one class where I had a lot of problems, and that was graduate quantum mechanics. And so I didn't do very well in that subject in the qualifying exams. And so because of that problem, I wasn't allowed to pass the qualifying exams. Now, the interesting thing was, at the beginning of my experience in graduate school, I had a run-in with one of the professors, a fellow named Alexei Meradudin. And I kind of thought that he was really being very troublesome to me. I had to take his math physics class, which is a very difficult class, and I managed to get through that okay. So I won some respect from him, but he just never seemed to be a very good guy from my perspective. So after I'd gotten through this qualifying exam process, I discovered that my greatest champion behind the scenes to get me through the quals was Meradudin. He had been my greatest champion. I had totally misjudged him for 2 years that I had been in graduate school. I had completely misjudged this man. I was so embarrassed. I was absolutely unbelievably embarrassed. And
he was like your Snape from Harry Potter, right? He was like Snape, thought he was the bad guy all along, and then you find out at the end he's your advocate. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was the bad guy. And it turns out he was my great advocate. That the shock from learning that, from being told that, I wasn't told by Meradudin. I was told by other people that is what had happened. Mm-hmm. And I learned. Don't be very careful about your judgments. They can be way off.
That's a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what lessons might you have or advice to other writers who are thinking of writing their own memoirs? I know a lot of times people might think, oh, it's too late for me. I missed my opportunity, or it's too hard to do this every day and be committed. What advice do you have
All
for other
right.
writers?
First of all, age is your friend, not your enemy. The older you are when you write your memoirs, the more you have to write about, because you have an entire lifetime of experience to draw upon. So yeah, that's a good time to start writing your memoirs, as a matter of fact. Second thing is write and write and write. Any professional will tell you, you don't get to be a professional without a lot of practice. Okay. And what'll happen is the early stuff that you write, you probably won't like when you come back to look at it. But the more you write, the more experience you gain. And eventually you will develop a feel for the process of writing. And then the writing becomes fun. It becomes an entertainment. You'll actually enjoy putting the words down, flinging words at the page, as I expressed earlier. It really does become fun to do. It becomes fun to tell your stories to your imaginary listeners, whoever they might be. You find things in yourself. You become slightly extroverted, even though in practice you're an introvert in company. But when you're putting stuff on the page, you're extroverted. It's a different kind of personality that you show. And that's important. It's important to recognize that you have that in yourself as well. So write, just go ahead and write.
Oh, absolutely. And you talk about it being fun to write. What do people say about your books to read? Because I think I've heard that some say your books are fun to read. Is that right?
They are fun to read. That's the feedback I get from various readers. And I've gotten quite a few responses, people who've read my book. Well, my first book, basically. The second book is about to come. We've gotten some reviews of the second book, and they're very favorable. So yeah, people find the stories to be very entertaining, and that's gratifying. That's what I'm trying to achieve, of course, is to make it fun for other people.
What's the most surprising thing or interesting thing or shocking thing maybe that somebody's told you about your books?
I think the most interesting thing, the big surprise, is that in some of the stories that I've written, I touch people's emotions. People get really pretty emotionally involved in some of the things that I describe, particularly my own experience in recovering from, having gone through this tragedy with Sarah. I make a connection there at a very deep level, which I thought was unexpected. And I'm extremely gratified about that. So apparently some of the things that I've written have helped other people a great deal. And when I get that kind of feedback, it touches me. It really does.
Yeah, that's the greatest compliment I think any writer can get, whether it's memoir or even nonfiction, fiction, etc. When you touch somebody and you impact their life in some way.
And let me tell you about fiction. I don't write fiction. I write truth. Mm-hmm. I try and make things as accurate as to the real events as I possibly can. For example, when I was writing journals, I was writing the day's events, literally, within hours of the events happening. Mm-hmm. So they had to be, very lively and very accurate. And that's why people enjoyed reading those things. But every fiction that you write, if you turn out that you like to write fiction stories, the fiction you're writing about is not about other people. You're writing about yourself. Mm-hmm. And what you see in other people and your reactions to other people and putting yourself in other people's places. But you're really writing about yourself and what you would do in those situations. So everything that you write, whether it's a fiction or a memoir, as I've written, they're really autobiographical. Everything is autobiographical.
Very true. Chester L. Richards, he is continuing the trek. The trek continues, as everybody can see, with the second book in your memoir series. Can you let folks know where they can go to find out more about you and your books and everything, all of the adventures you undertake? Can you tell us about your website?
Yeah, you can. I have a website. It's called chesterlrichards.com. and you can find everything there. There's stories there. There's pictures of and videos, interviews, all kinds of interesting things. And there are links to Amazon and Barnes and Noble so that you can find my books through there. Or you can go to Amazon and just type in Chester L. Richards and you'll find my books.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, or X. I'm on X. I'm on Facebook as well. You can find me there.
And speaking of interviews, you have a great interview series on your YouTube channel too that people can go and check out and take deeper dives into all of this. Chester L. Richards, thank you so much for being with us today on the Books That Make You Show and sharing your journeys with us. And I want you back for book 3. Okay, you're going to come back.
I promise. I'll be here if I'm alive. That is, we'll see.
You will be alive. I
promise not to go on anything more hazardous than sitting in front of a computer, which is bad enough.
Don't go out petting any leopards on us now. Leave the leopards.
Those are great memories in the past.
Exactly. Okay, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody else who has been listening and watching and enjoying the show today. Remember, you can visit our website at booksthatmakeyou.com and discover more amazing books and authors. You can sign up for our Webby Award-winning Books That Make You newsletter. You can also follow us. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a like. Make sure you leave a comment or two, and it all helps us to grow and grow so we can share more stories. Until next time, all of my bookish friends, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You Show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.